Hello, my sleepless friend. Welcome back to Ancient Sleep. I am the sleepless historian. The day has finally relinquished its hold on you. The noise of the waking world, the demands of the clock, the sharp edges of light and metal, all of them have retreated, pulled back like a tide that leaves only the wet, dark sand of the night behind. You are safe here. You are suspended in that quiet, velvet space between the memory of what you have done and the promise of what you must do. A space where nothing is required of you but to breathe. Let your shoulders fall. Let the tension that gathers at the base of your neck dissolve, turning into mist, drifting away into the shadows that now fill the corners of your room. Tonight, the walls of your room are becoming transparent. They are softening, losing their solidity, turning into gray mist that swirls and separates. The floor beneath you is no longer rigid wood or carpet. It is gently swaying, a subtle rhythmic motion that mimics the slow, deep breathing of a sleeping giant. We are drifting away from the concrete and the glass, away from the electric hum of the cities that never truly sleep, and we are moving toward a darkness that is older, deeper, and infinitely more alive. We are traveling to the lungs of the world. We are going to the Amazon. Feel the air change around you. It is no longer the dry, recycled air of a climate-controlled room. It has become heavy, laden with moisture, a thick, warm blanket that presses gently against your skin. It carries a scent that is impossible to untangle. The smell of wet earth, of leaves decaying into sweet black soil, of night-blooming flowers that open their white petals only to the moon, releasing a perfume so heavy it almost tastes like honey on the back of your throat. This is the breath of the forest. It enters your lungs, warm and rich, filling you with the oxygen generated by a billion leaves that have spent the day drinking the sun. Above us, there are no stars. Not yet. There is only the canopy. It is a ceiling of interlocking branches, a vast, complex architecture of wood and leaf that stretches for thousands of miles in every direction. It blocks out the sky, creating a cavernous, private world below. You can feel the weight of it, a protective lid that holds the darkness in. It is raining, a soft, persistent drumming that sounds different here than anywhere else on Earth. It does not click against roof tiles or splash against pavement. It is a muted, muffled sound, millions of heavy drops striking millions of waxy, broad leaves. Clip. Clop. Shh. The sound is a constant, white noise static, a curtain of water that washes away the dust of your thoughts. We are floating on a river. It is the Xingu, or perhaps the great Amazon itself, a ribbon of black glass moving silently through the corridor of trees. The water is opaque, dark as ink, carrying the dissolved tannins of fallen vegetation. If you were to dip your hand over the side of our small wooden boat, the water would feel surprisingly warm, silky against your fingers, like liquid velvet. There is no current that you can feel, only a gentle, inexorable pull toward the ocean, thousands of miles away. The boat creaks softly, a rhythmic groan of wood against water, the only man-made sound in a universe of nature. Listen to the darkness. It is not silent. True silence does not exist here. Instead, there is a living soundscape, a symphonic hum that vibrates in the air. It is the high-pitched metallic whir of the cicadas, a sound so constant it becomes part of the silence. It is the deep, resonant croak of tree frogs, calling out from the bromeliads high above, their throats expanding like bubbles in the wet air. Occasionally, there is a splash in the water near the bank, a caiman sliding off a mud bank, or a fish surfacing to snatch a moth. These sounds do not startle you. They are the heartbeat of this place. They wrap around you, a cocoon of vibration that separates you from the worries of the human world. The darkness here has texture. It is not empty space, it is thick with life. Fireflies drift through the understory, tiny pulses of cold green light that blink on and off, mimicking the stars that are hidden above the trees. They trace lazy, looping paths through the humid air, lingering over the surface of the black water, reflecting themselves in the mirror of the river. You watch one float past your face, a silent spark in the gloom, and your eyes follow it until it disappears into the wall of vines that lines the riverbank. We are moving deeper. The river narrows. The great trees on either bank lean inward, their branches reaching out to touch each other, forming a tunnel of vegetation. Roots, thick and gnarled as the limbs of giants, twist down from the banks and vanish into the water, grasping the earth, holding the forest together against the erosion of the flow. The air grows cooler here, protected from the heat of the day by layers of shade. You can feel the coolness settling on your skin, a refreshing balm. We are looking for something that the maps say is not here. For centuries, the world believed this place was a green hell, a counterfeit paradise where the soil was too poor, the insects too voracious, and the jungle too hostile to support anything more than small, scattered tribes of wanderers. They looked at the wall of green and saw only chaos. They saw a place where humanity was an intruder, a fleeting shadow that left no mark. But the forest is keeping a secret. Beneath the tangle of lianas that hang like ropes from the sky, beneath the carpets of moss that soften every hard edge, beneath the very soil that supports these towering mahogany and kapok trees, there is a memory. It is a memory of geometry. It is a memory of order. As our boat drifts silently around a bend in the river, the moon finds a gap in the canopy. A single shaft of pale silver light cuts through the darkness, illuminating the riverbank. And there, revealed for just a moment before the clouds shift again, is a change in the landscape. The chaotic tangle of the jungle floor seems to hesitate. The ground rises, not in a natural slope, but in a straight, deliberate line. It is a ridge of earth, overgrown with ferns and saplings, but unmistakably straight. It runs perpendicular to the river, disappearing into the deep bush. It is a scar on the face of the earth, healed over by 500 years of regrowth. It is the ghost of a road. We are entering the territory of the garden cities. We are entering Kuhikugu. But to see it, to truly understand what lies buried here, we must do more than just travel through space. We must travel through time. We must let the current of the river pull us backward, upstream, against the flow of history. We must peel back the layers of the forest, leaf by leaf, vine by vine. We must dissolve the great trees that stand on the banks and turn them back into saplings, back into seeds, back into nothingness. Close your eyes. Let the sound of the rain intensify. It washes away the present. It washes away the modern cities of steel and glass. It washes away the asphalt and the power lines. It washes away the noise of engines and the glow of screens. You are drifting into the deep past. The boat is still beneath you, rocking gently. The air is still thick and sweet with the scent of vanilla orchids and damp wood. But the quality of the night is changing. The silence is deepening. You are a traveler in a time before the ships came from the east. You are a witness to a world that flourished in isolation, a world that solved the riddle of the jungle. Here the darkness is not a threat. It is a blanket. It is the same darkness that covered the people who lived here a millennium ago. They heard this same rain. They watched these same fireflies. They smelled this same river. You are breathing their air. You are sharing their sleep. The boat slows. We have arrived at the beginning. Before we can see the cities, we must understand the canvas upon which they were painted. We must listen to the land itself. The water laps against the hull. Lap, lap, lap. A hypnotic rhythm that slows your heart rate, syncing it with the slow geological pulse of the continent. Rest here for a moment in the drift. Let the humidity soften your skin. Let the darkness soothe your tired eyes. You are suspended in the cradle of the Amazon. You are safe. The history is waiting for you, buried in the mud, waiting for the rain to wash it clean. Wait. Listen. The earth is about to speak. We must descend. To understand the city, we must understand the foundation. To understand the garden, we must understand the soil. Let us leave the boat for a moment, not physically, for the river is our only road, but let your mind sink. Let it drop through the black water, past the catfish drifting in the currents, past the submerged logs of trees that fell a century ago, down into the silt and deeper still. We are going down into the bedrock. We are going back before the memory of wood to the memory of stone. Listen, can you hear it? It is not a sound you hear with your ears, but a vibration you feel in your teeth, in the hollows of your bones. It is a low, grinding hum, a frequency so deep it spans millions of years. This is the sound of the earth breathing. This is the sound of continents, drifting like rafts on a sea of molten glass. Long before this darkness was a forest, it was a battleground of plates. Cast your mind back 50 million years. A blink of an eye to the stars, but an eternity for us. To the west, where the sun sets, a cataclysm was unfolding in slow motion. The Nazca Plate, a colossal slab of ocean floor, was driving itself beneath the South American continent. It did not go quietly. It ground against the land, friction turning rock into magma, pressure folding the granite crust like wet linen. Higher and higher the wall rose. The Andes. They tore through the clouds, a jagged spine of gray and white thrusting up from the tropical lowlands. They blocked the sky. They changed the wind. And most importantly, they broke the river. You see, the Amazon did not always flow to the Atlantic. Once, in a time forgotten by all but the stones, the great river flowed west. It poured its waters into the Pacific Ocean, but the mountains rose like a fortress gate, slamming shut the exit. Imagine the confusion of the water. The river, ancient and powerful, suddenly found its path barred by a wall of stone 3 miles high. It recoiled. It pooled. It stagnated. The center of the continent became a sea, not an ocean of salt, but a vast, shallow inland sea of fresh water. The P-bus system. Picture it. You are standing on the edge of this lost world. The air is hotter than it is now, thicker, suffocating. There are no trees here, only a boundless expanse of swamp and water, stretching from the foothills of the new mountains to the shield of the east. The water is still. It is a mirror reflecting a younger sun. Beneath the surface, giants move. Crocodiles the size of buses, the Purosaurus, glide through the murky depths, their armored backs breaking the surface like islands. Turtles with shells as wide as a man is tall paddle through the reeds. It is a world of monsters, a world of slow, reptilian patience. The bottom of the sea was collecting the dead. For millions of years, sediments washed down from the eroding mountains, settling in layers of mud and sand, trapping the bones of the giants, compressing them into the geological memory of the basin. But water is relentless. It does not accept a cage. Over aeons, the pressure built. The inland sea swelled, fed by the rains trapped by the mountains. It needed an escape, and it found one. To the east. It began to carve a groove into the sandstone shield, a trickle at first, then a torrent, then a deluge. The dam broke. The inland sea drained away, rushing toward the Atlantic, reversing the flow of an entire continent. The modern Amazon was born. A river that flows backwards. A river that remembers the ocean it used to feed, even as it runs toward the one it now fills. As the water receded, it left behind the land. But what kind of land? This is the cruelty of the Amazon, the secret that the green canopy hides. The soil here is not like the rich black loam of the temperate north. It is not the fertile silt of the Nile or the Ganges. Touch the ground in your mind. Reach down through the leaf litter. What do you find? It is clay. Red and yellow clay. Kaolinite. It is smooth, sticky, and vibrant to look at, like the paint of a raw wound. But it is old. It is senile soil, weathered by millions of years of punishing rain and baking sun. The water has washed away the nutrients, the calcium, the potassium, the phosphorus. It has leached the life out of the earth, leaving behind a skeleton of aluminum and iron oxide. It is acid. It is hostile. It is a wet desert. Look at the forest that stands upon it today. It seems like a paradox, doesn't it? How can such a riot of life, trees that scrape the sky, vines as thick as pythons, flowers of every impossible color, spring from such impoverished earth? It is an illusion. The forest does not live on the soil, it lives above it. The Amazon is a closed loop, a cannibalistic system. When a leaf falls, it does not have time to become soil. The fungi and the termites seize it instantly, breaking it down, recycling its nutrients directly back into the roots of the living trees. The forest feeds on its own dead. It holds its wealth in the living biomass, not in the bank of the ground. If you were to cut down the trees, the illusion would vanish. The sun would bake the clay into brick. The rain would wash away the thin layer of ash, and nothing would grow. This was the landscape that greeted the first arrivals. This was the challenge waiting in the silence. Imagine the first human eyes gazing upon this endless green wall. They saw a world that was overwhelmingly alive, yet geologically stingy. They saw a land that pushed back. To survive here, you could not simply plant a seed and watch it grow. The earth would eat your seed and give you nothing back. The geology dictated a hard truth. You are not welcome here. But the human spirit is stubborn. It does not accept the verdict of the stones. The rain continues to fall in our present moment, washing over the boat, washing over the canopy. But now you know what lies beneath. You know that we are floating over a graveyard of an ancient sea. You know that the soil on the banks is red and hungry. The stage is set. The geology is static, locked in its chemical poverty. It is waiting for a catalyst. It is waiting for the alchemists who will turn this yellow clay into black gold. The silence of the stones is deep, but it is about to be broken by the sound of a footstep. Rest now. Let the magnitude of this timeline settle over you like a heavy quilt. Millions of years of shifting plates, of rising mountains, of reversing rivers, all to create this specific moment of darkness. The stage is empty. The actors are about to arrive. The stones have set the stage. The stage is a trap. The soil is a vault, locked tight against those who would ask it for food. And yet, they came. Drift with me now. Let the current of the river pull us forward from the age of empty geology into the age of shadows. The timeline blurs. We are not counting years here, we are counting heartbeats. We are looking back 10,000, perhaps 12,000 cycles of the sun. The world was different then. The ice caps far to the north were retreating, weeping great meltwater tears into the oceans, raising the tides. But here, deep in the equatorial belt, the change was subtle. The forest was breathing, expanding, inhaling the moisture and exhaling the green ocean. They came from the northwest. They came from the spine of the Andes, climbing down from the cold, thin air, where the stone was bare and the wind cut like a knife. They descended into the cloud forests, where the mist clings to the moss forever. And then they kept going down, down into the heat, down into the pressure. Imagine the sensation on their skin. For generations, their ancestors had known the bite of the frost and the dry, crisp air of the savannas. Now, the air changed. It became solid. As they descended the final slopes, the humidity rose up to meet them like a physical wall. It wrapped around their throats, heavy and wet. It slicked their skin with instant sweat. To breathe here was to drink the air. They stood at the edge of the basin. Before them lay the green wall. It was not a landscape. It was a cliff of vegetation. Trees so tall they seemed to hold up the sky, their trunks buttressed like cathedral arches, their canopies woven together so tightly that the ground beneath was plunged into eternal twilight. Step into their footprints. Feel the months squelch between your toes, cool, slippery, alive. It is not dead earth. It is a slurry of decaying leaves, rotting fruit, and insect casings. Every step is a negotiation with the ground. Vines, tough as cured leather, snag at your ankles. Thorns, sharp as obsidian needles, reach out from the shadows to graze your arms. They were small. In the face of this titan, they were infinitesimally small. They carried spears tipped with stone, flaked with the patience of desperate hours. They carried woven baskets. They carried fire in the form of smoldering embers wrapped in leaves, a precious, fragile god they had to keep alive against the damp. Why did they enter? Why leave the open spaces for this suffocating embrace? Perhaps they were following the game. Perhaps they were fleeing a greater danger behind them. Or perhaps, like the river, they were simply pulled by gravity into the center of the continent. The first nights were a terror we can scarcely imagine. In your safe room, with the walls that hold back the wind, try to feel the vulnerability of that first sleep. There were no walls here. There was only the fire, a small, flickering circle of orange light pushing back a universe of black. The jungle at night is not a place of rest. It is a place of hunt. The darkness is full of ice. Listen. The soundscape shifts. The cicadas of the day fall silent, replaced by the crickets of the night, a pulsing, rhythmic static. Then the heavier sounds. The snap of a twig, sharp as a gunshot in the quiet. The rustle of heavy leaves high above. Is it a monkey shifting in its sleep? Or a boa constrictor sliding its muscular weight toward a lower branch? And then, the sound that freezes the blood. A low, sawing cough. Deep, resonant, vibrating in the chest. The jaguar. The spotted shadow. It is out there, beyond the ring of firelight, smelling the salt of their sweat, watching with eyes that catch the moon. They huddled together, skin against skin, the smell of wood smoke and fear mingling in the damp air. They were not the masters of this domain. They were guests, and uninvited ones at that. Survival was a puzzle with lethal consequences. The forest looked abundant, a riot of green, a feast of biological wealth. But it was a deception. This is the green hunger. They looked up and saw fruits dangling from branches 100 feet in the air. Massive, hard-shelled nuts, sweet pods. But they were out of reach, guarded by stinging ants and aggressive wasps. They looked at the plants on the ground. Lush, inviting leaves. But to eat the wrong leaf here is to die. Nature in the Amazon defends itself with chemical warfare. Strychnine, curare, cyanide. Poisons synthesized by plants to stop the grazing of insects, now waiting for the ignorant tongue of a human. They had to learn, and they learned through the grim science of taste and consequence. A numbness on the lips, a cramp in the belly, a fever that burned for 3 days. The forest taught them with pain, but they were observant. They watched the animals. They saw what the tapir ate. They saw what the macaw discarded. They learned to peel the bitter skin, to soak the toxic roots in the running river to wash away the poison, to roast the nuts until the shell cracked. Slowly, the relationship changed. They stopped fighting the forest and began to slip into its rhythm. They learned that the river was not just water, it was a road. They hollowed out the great trunks of fallen trees, using fire and stone adzes to crave the first canoes. Hear the sound of the stone striking wood. Thack, thack, thack. A dull, rhythmic percussion that traveled over the water. It was the first industrial sound of the Amazon. With the canoe, the green hell became a highway. They could move faster than the jaguar. They could fish the deep channels. But the soil remained the enemy. They cleared small patches of land, felling the trees with agonizing slowness, letting the sun strike the earth for the first time in centuries. They burned the fallen wood, slash and burn, a technique born of necessity. The ash provided a burst of nutrients. For a year, maybe 2, the manioc grew thick and tuberous. The maize stood tall. But then the yellow clay took over. The rain washed the ash away. The crops withered. The soil turned hard and brick-like. The jungle rushed back in, choking the clearing with secondary growth, erasing their labor as if it had never happened. They were nomads, forced to move, forced to run, always cutting, always burning, always moving on. They were shadows on the leaves, leaving no ruins, no stone monuments, no permanent mark. To the historian, looking only for stone, they were invisible. But something shifted. A thought, an innovation born of desperation and genius. Stop and consider the magnitude of this moment. It is as significant as the invention of the wheel or the discovery of bronze. But it happened quietly, in the mud, with dirty hands. Someone, somewhere, perhaps a woman tending the hearth, perhaps a shaman mixing herbs, looked at the garbage pile behind the settlement. They looked at the mixture of broken pottery, fish bones, charcoal from the fire, and human waste that had accumulated. They noticed that where this refuse touched the earth, the earth changed. It did not turn yellow and hard. It turned black. It turned soft. It held the water. And where a seed fell into this accidental compost, it didn't just grow, it exploded with life. The plants on this black earth were greener, taller, heavier with fruit. They did not wither after a year. The soil did not die. It seemed to heal itself. This was the spark, the realization. We do not have to accept the soil the gods gave us. We can make our own. The transition from wanderer to settler began. The transition from green hell to the garden. They stopped running from the yellow clay. They began to dig. They began to cook the earth. The atmosphere in our mental journey shifts. The fear of the first arrival is fading, replaced by a growing determination. The darkness is no longer a cage. It is a canvas. The rain is still falling, but now, mixed with the sound of the water, there is a new sound. It is not the passive silence of the wild. It is the sound of voices. The sound of children laughing without the constant threat of hunger. The sound of a civilization taking root, not on the land, but into it. They are no longer ghosts. They are becoming the architects of the Amazon. The fire in the center of the village burns brighter now. It is no longer just for protection against the jaguar. It is a tool. It is a factory. They are burning wood not just for heat, but for charcoal. They are grinding the bones of the fish. They are smashing the clay pots that failed. They are preparing to build a city. But to build it, they must first build the ground it stands on. The first arrival is over. The settlement has begun. We ascend. Let the mud of the riverbank fall away from your feet. Let the heavy, claustrophobic air of the understory loosen its grip on your chest. We are rising, pulled upward by the heat of the day, drifting like smoke toward the canopy. We break through the ceiling of leaves, emerging into the blinding white light of the equatorial sun. Look down. From this height, the Amazon is no longer a dark tunnel. It is a green ocean. It stretches to the curvature of the earth, a textured carpet of broccoli-topped trees undulating in the wind, broken only by the shimmering snake of the river. To the uninitiated eye, it looks wild. It looks pristine. It looks like a place where human hands have never rested. But you have the eyes of the sleepless historian now. You know how to look past the illusion. Strip away the trees. In your mind, dissolve the forest. Peel back the green layer like a velvet cloth covering a table. What remains? You do not see a wilderness. You see a circuit board. Etched into the clay of the earth, stretching across thousands of square kilometers of the Upper Xingu, is a geometry so precise it hurts the heart to look at it. It is a revelation of order. Squares, circles, octagons, perfect lines cutting through the chaotic terrain, ignoring the curves of the hills, imposing a mathematical will upon the wild.
These are not the erratic paths of wanderers. These are the blueprints of an empire. We are hovering over the golden age of the Amazon, a period roughly 1,000 years ago, before the ships with white sails appeared on the horizon. This is the era of Kuhikugu. Forget what you know about ancient cities. Forget the cramped stone streets of medieval London, where sewage ran in the gutters and the sky was choked by the smoke of coal. Forget the stone pyramids of Egypt or the limestone temples of the Maya. The Amazonians did not build with stone, for there was no stone to be found in this sea of sediment. They built with the blood of the forest itself. They built with earth and wood. What you see below is not a single, dense metropolis like Rome. It is something far more advanced, something modern urban planners still dream of today. It is a garden city. Imagine a constellation of stars. The settlements are scattered across the landscape, not clustered together in a festering heap, but spaced out in a deliberate galactic pattern. Each settlement is a node in a vast network. Zoom in on one of these nodes. It is a plaza, a vast, open circle of beaten earth, hard and smooth as concrete. Around it, the great longhouses rise. They are majestic structures, thatched with palm leaves woven so tightly they are waterproof for a decade. They are massive, some longer than a football field, curving like the hulls of overturned ships. Inside, 50 families might sleep, their hammocks swinging in the cool, smoky air, a communal existence of shared dreams. But it is what connects these nodes that truly steals the breath. Look at the roads. They are not mere trails, they are boulevards. They are straight as an arrow, cutting through the forest with an engineer's arrogance. Some are 50 meters wide, wider than a modern 6-lane highway. They are raised, built up from the earth to stay dry during the seasonal floods. They are curbed with banks of clay. Imagine walking on one of these roads 500 years ago. The surface is kept meticulously clean, swept by the citizens, free of weeds. On either side, the jungle has been pushed back. You are not walking in a dark tunnel. You are walking in a park. Sunlight dapples the ground. Fruit trees, piki, sapote, cacao, line the avenue, planted there to feed the travelers. These roads connect the settlements like arteries connecting organs. They bridge the rivers with wooden structures that have long since rotted away, leaving only the post holes in the mud as their ghosts. They bind a region the size of New Jersey into a single, functioning socio-political organism. It is a civilization of flow. Goods move. Ideas move. Husbands and wives move between clans. The isolation of the green hell has been abolished. In its place is a grid of connection. The scale of this modification is staggering. We are not talking about a few villages. We are talking about a population of perhaps 10 million people living in a landscape that they have completely engineered. But unlike the concrete jungles of the 21st century, this engineering does not kill the host. This is the genius of the Amazonian architects. They did not replace the forest, they domesticated it. Look closely at the vegetation between the settlements. It looks wild, but it is not. It is an orchard on a planetary scale. They selected the trees they wanted, the ones that gave fruit, the ones that gave wood for canoes, the ones that gave medicine, and they removed the ones they didn't. Over thousands of years, they changed the genetic composition of the forest itself. This is why, even today, when you walk into certain parts of the Amazon, you feel a strange sense of haunting. You find a grove of Brazil nut trees concentrated in one spot, or a patch of acai palms so dense it looks unnatural. It is unnatural. It is an abandoned farm, still producing food for masters who have been dead for 5 centuries. The wind shifts up here in the high air. It carries a scent. Can you smell it? It is the smell of 1,000 fires. From our aerial vantage point, we can see the smoke rising. It creates a haze that softens the harsh tropical sunlight. This is not the smoke of destruction. It is the smoke of the hearth. It is the smell of roasting fish, of baking manioc bread, of resin incense burning to keep the mosquitoes at bay. It is the scent of a golden afternoon in a land of plenty. Down there, in the plaza of Kuhikugu, a ceremony is taking place. We cannot hear the specific words, but we can hear the rhythm, the thumping of feet on the hard earth, the rattle of seed pods tied to ankles, the sound of wooden flutes, low and mournful, drifting up to meet us. They are dancing in the center of their world. They are surrounded by a deep moat, a defensive trench dug by hand stretching for kilometers. Wooden palisades, tall walls of sharpened logs encircle the city, painting a line of defense against the shadows of the outer wild. They believe their world will last forever. Why wouldn't they? They have tamed the soil. They have organized the water. They have built a network of roads that defies the chaos of nature. They are the masters of the green world. They have achieved a balance that we, with all our steel and silicon, have yet to find. They are living with the biome, not against it. They are the gardeners of a continent. But there is a melancholy in this view, because we know what happens next. We know that wood rots. We know that earth erodes. We know that without stone, history is fragile. A stone pyramid shouts at eternity. It says, "I was here." But a wooden city? A wooden city whispers. It relies on the memory of the living to maintain its form. If the people die, the city does not become a ruin. It becomes a forest. The grass grows over the road. The termites eat the central post of the longhouse. The moat fills with silt. The jungle waits with infinite patience for the gardener to put down his tools. The golden age is at its zenith. The sun is high. The roads are swept clean. The silos are full of maize. The Amazon is not a wilderness. It is a bustling, humming, thriving biological machine. But shadows are lengthening. The sun must set. Let us descend again. We have seen the macro, We have seen the map. Now we must touch the texture. We must go down into the city, under the roof of the longhouse, to see the hands that built this miracle. We must look at the technology that made it all possible. Not the technology of gears and wheels, but the technology of dirt. We are drifting down. The canopy closes over our heads once more. The white light fades to twilight. The vast geometry of the roads disappears, replaced by the intimate details of the village. Prepare your hands. We are about to touch the black earth. We have fallen from the sky. The grand map of the geometric empire has vanished, obscured by the thatched roof of a single shelter. We are no longer birds. We are guests in the workshop of the earth. Quiet now. Move closer. Closer still, until the rest of the world dissolves into a blur of shadows, and your entire universe is reduced to a single square meter of ground and a pair of hands. The hands belong to a woman. You cannot see her face. It is hidden in the gloom of the longhouse, but you can see the history written on her skin. Her hands are strong, the knuckles swollen with years of work, the skin mapped with the calluses of survival. They are stained dark, not with dirt, but with the pigment of creation. She is kneeling on a woven mat of palm fibers. The air here is thick and still, smelling intensely of wood smoke and damp clay. It is a grounding scent, heavy and ancient. Watch her. She is performing an act of alchemy. In front of her lies a pile of the enemy, the yellow clay. It is the sterile earth of the basin, the senile soil that refuses to give life. It is slick, sticky, and cold. To the uninitiated, it is useless mud, but she knows the secret. She knows how to transmute this lead into gold. She reaches into a woven basket and pulls out a handful of black shards. Charcoal. It is not just ash. It is carbon that has been burned slowly, starved of oxygen, until it became a porous, crystallized skeleton of the wood it once was. Listen to the sound. K-dash uns. K-dash uns. She crushes the charcoal between two river stones. The sound is dry and gritty, a sharp friction that cuts through the humid air. The black dust falls like rain onto the yellow clay. She adds more ingredients. She adds the crushed bones of the river turtle, rich in calcium, white fragments gleaming in the dust. She adds the broken remains of an old clay pot, ground into a fine powder, the grog that will give the soil structure. She adds the dark, composted waste from the village midden, the decomposed memory of 1,000 meals. And then she plunges her hands into the mixture. Feel the sensation with her, the coolness of the clay against the palm, the sharp grit of the charcoal biting into the fingerprints, the oily slickness of the organic decay. She folds the black into the yellow. She kneads the earth like bread dough. Squelch, slap, fold, This is not farming. This is engineering. What she is creating is Terra Preta do Indio, the Amazonian dark earth. She does not know the words cation exchange capacity or porosity. She does not know that the charcoal structure acts like a microscopic coral reef, trapping nutrients and water in its billions of tiny pores, creating a sanctuary for bacteria and fungi. She does not know she's sequestering carbon that will remain stable for 2,000 years. She only knows that the black earth is alive. She knows that unlike the yellow clay which dies under the sun, the black earth grows. It heals itself. If she takes a bucket of this soil to the fields, the corn will grow twice as high. If she leaves it alone, the soil itself seems to reproduce, thickening over the centuries as if it were a living organism. She is knitting the soil. She is weaving a safety net for her grandchildren. Now, watch her hands shift tasks. The soil is prepared. Now she must build the vessel. There is no potter's wheel here. The spinning wheel is a technology of the open plains, irrelevant in the forest. Here, everything is built by the coil. She takes a lump of the clay she has tempered with the charcoal shards. She rolls it between her palms. Swish, swish. The sound is soft, rhythmic, like dry leaves rubbing together. The clay stretches into a long, thin snake. She lays the coil down on a base of a broken gourd. She pinches it. Pinch, smooth, pinch. Smooth, asterisk. The rhythm is hypnotic. It is the heartbeat of the afternoon. Her thumb drags across the wet clay, erasing the seam, blending the coil into the wall of the rising pot. The clay is cool and yielding. It responds to the slightest pressure. It records the texture of her skin. She's making a burial urn, Aigachaba. It is huge, wide enough to hold a crouching man. It is painted with white and red slip, geometric patterns that mimic the skin of the anaconda or the shell of the tortoise. Imagine the focus in her fingers. The world outside, the jaguar, the storm, the river, does not exist. There is only the clay. There is only the perfect circle she is forming out of chaos. She picks up a small, smooth stone, a polishing stone, passed down from her mother. She begins to burnish the surface of the drying pot. Shrup, shrup, shrup. The sound is repetitive, soothing, almost sleep-inducing. With every stroke, the dull clay begins to shine. It takes on the luster of skin. It becomes watertight. She is sealing the vessel, closing the pores, making it ready to hold the fermented wine, or the bones of the ancestors. This pottery is not just a container. It is a part of the soil system. When this pot eventually breaks, and it will break, its shards will be swept into the midden. They will be crushed. They will be mixed back into the earth to aerate the next generation of soil. The cycle is perfect. Nothing is wasted. The bowl you eat from today becomes the earth that feeds you tomorrow. Feel the cramps in her fingers, the ache in her shoulders. This is the cost of civilization. It is not built by magic. It is built by the relentless repetition of human muscle. The light in the longhouse is fading. The shadows lengthen across the beaten earth floor. The smoke from the hearth hangs low, a blue haze that stings the eyes gently. She pauses. She wipes her hands on her thighs. The black dust of the charcoal and the red dust of the clay mix on her skin, creating a map of the land she inhabits. She touches the rim of the pot one last time. A fingerprint is left there, a tiny swirl of ridges pressed into the wet earth. 500 years from now, a scientist with a trowel will dig up a shard of this pot. They will brush away the dirt, and they will see that fingerprint. They will place their own gloved thumb over it, and for a fleeting second, the two hands will touch across the abyss of time. The warmth of her hand will meet the curiosity of theirs. But for now, the pot is just wet clay. The soil is just dirt under the fingernails. The work is done for the day. The hands relax. The tension leaves the tendons. It is time to eat. The focus shifts. We move from the cold mineral smell of the clay to a warmer, richer scent. The stomach rumbles in anticipation. The hands that built the earth must now feed the body. The transition is slow. The light turns from the gray of the workshop to the orange glow of the embers. We are moving to the heart of the home. We are moving to the hearth. The clay has dried on the skin. The work of the day is done. Now the body demands its wage. We move deeper into the longhouse. The space is vast, a cathedral of shadows, but it is partitioned by invisible walls of warmth. Every family has a center, and that center is the fire. Come closer to the hearth. It is not a roaring bonfire. That would be wasteful. It is a controlled constellation of embers, 3 logs arranged in a star pattern, their tips meeting in the middle to cradle the heat. The ash is gray and soft, insulating the coals that glow with a deep, pulsing ruby light. Sit down. The ground here is covered with woven mats, smooth and polished by years of sitting. The air is different here. It is no longer just humid. It is savory. It is thick with a primitive, comforting perfume that has followed humanity since the discovery of the flame. The smell of cooking. Watch the transformation of poison into bread. In the corner, a large wooden trough sits heavy on the floor. Inside lies a pile of roots, rough, brown-skinned, looking like broken pieces of wood. Manioc, cassava, the bitter root. It is the paradox of the Amazon. The root is full of starch, full of life, but it is also full of death. It is laced with cyanide. To eat it raw is to die. Listen to the rhythm of the safety. Scrape. Scrape. A woman is grating the roots against a board studded with sharp stone chips. The sound is wet and fibrous. The white pulp falls into a wooden bowl, releasing a smell that is sharp and acrid. The smell of the toxin escaping. But the technology of the kitchen is as advanced as the technology of the soil. Watch her take the wet pulp and stuff it into a long, snake-like tube woven from palm fibers. The tipiti. It hangs from a rafter. She pulls it down, stretching the weave. The tube tightens. It squeezes. Drip, drip, drip. A yellow liquid flows out of the mesh, falling into a clay pot below. This is the poison leaving the food. It is a chemical extraction performed without glass beakers, guided only by the wisdom of grandmothers. What remains in the tube is pure white flour. She scatters it onto a flat clay griddle placed over the fire. The steam rises. The smell changes instantly. The acrid bite vanishes, replaced by the warm, toasty aroma of baking bread. The beiju cake forms, a flat white disc, crisp on the edges, soft in the middle. It is the staff of life in the jungle. But there is more. The river has been generous today. Suspended over the embers on a wooden rack, a mokem, is a fish. It is a tambaki, a river monster with ribs as thick as pork chops. It is roasting slowly in the smoke. Lean in. Smell the fat rendering. It drips down onto the coals. Sizzle, pop, sending up plumes of aromatic smoke that flavor the meat. The skin of the fish is charring, turning black and gold, cracking open to reveal the white, flaky flesh underneath. It smells of the river mud and the sweet fruits the fish ate before it was caught. This is not a meal of scarcity. This is a feast of the managed garden. Look at the wooden bowls scattered on the mat. They are filled with the treasures of the forest orchard. There are Brazil nuts, their hard, woody shells cracked open to reveal the rich, oily kernels inside. There is piqui, a yellow fruit that smells intensely strong, cheesy, floral, overwhelming to the uninitiated, but beloved here. There is the purple stain of the acai, mashed into a thick paste. These are not wild foragings. These are crops. The tree that dropped that nut was planted by an ancestor 500 years ago. The people are eating their inheritance. And then, the cup is passed. It is a gourd, hollowed out and polished black. It is filled with a thick, opaque liquid. Coin. It is the wine of the root. Manioc that has been chewed, spat out, and fermented. The enzymes in the saliva have broken the starch into sugar, and the wild yeasts of the air have turned the sugar into alcohol. The bowl is passed to you. In the spirit of the dream, you accept it. You lift it to your lips. It tastes sour. It tastes sweet. It has the heavy, earthy texture of gruel and the sharp kick of old cider. It warms the belly. It loosens the tongue. Around you, the shadows soften. The family is gathering. The men have returned from the fishing weirs. The children are curling up in the hammocks that swing gently in the smoky air. The soundscape of the hearth is the sound of peace. The crunch of the crisp fish skin, the soft tearing of the manioc bread, the slurping of the soup, the low murmur of voices recounting the day, the size of the turtle seen on the bank, the repair needed on the roof. There is no television here, no radio, no scrolling screen. There is only the fire and the voice. The firelight dances on their faces, painting them in shades of copper and gold. It reflects in their eyes, eyes that have seen the jaguar, eyes that know the names of 1,000 plants. You feel a profound sense of satiety. It is a feeling that modern life often denies us. The feeling of being completely full, completely safe, and completely where you belong. The walls of the longhouse are thick. The roof is watertight. The granaries are full. The soil is black and fertile. The anxiety of survival has faded. The green hell is a myth, invented by those who did not know how to live here. For those sitting around this fire, this is paradise. But as the meal ends, the mood shifts. The bellies are full, but the mind begins to wander upward. The fire dies down to a dull glow. The darkness presses in against the palisades outside. The night is not just for sleeping. The night is for watching. The shaman stands up. He picks up his rattle. He moves toward the entrance of the longhouse, toward the open air where the geometric earthworks wait under the stars. We must follow him. We must leave the warmth of the hearth and step back into the cool, vast night. We must look up. Step away from the fire. Leave the comfort of the roasted fish and the murmuring voices behind. Push aside the heavy woven mat that hangs over the doorway of the longhouse. Step out into the void. The transition is a physical shock. The air inside was warm, thick with smoke and humanity. The air outside is cool, crisp, and staggeringly vast. It smells of wet vegetation, of ozone, and of something ancient. The smell of the cosmos pressing down on the canopy. You are standing in the center of the great plaza. The village is asleep, or pretending to be. The longhouses loom around you like the backs of sleeping whales, dark shapes against a darker forest. But the plaza itself is awash in a ghostly light. Look up. The sky here is not the sky you know. It is not the light-polluted haze of the modern city, where only the brightest stars fight to be seen. Here, the sky is a crushing weight of glory. The stars are so numerous, so bright, that they seem to crowd each other out. They burn with a fierce, cold intensity, diamonds spilled on black velvet. But look closer. The Amazonians do not just read the points of light. They read the darkness between them. Trace the great white band of the Milky Way, the Camino d'Anta, the Taper's Path. It arches over the jungle like a bridge of smoke. Inside it, look for the shadows, the Coalsack Nebula. To you, it is empty space. To the eyes that watched this sky 1,000 years ago, it is the form of a great rhea, or a snake, devouring the stars. The geometry of the heavens is perfect. And here, on the ground, they have tried to mirror it. Walk to the edge of the plaza. Your feet tread on earth that has been packed hard by generations of dancing feet. You reach the edge of the settlement, and there, the ground falls away. It is the Moat. In the moonlight, it looks like a scar cut into the planet. 5 meters deep, 10 meters wide. It stretches away into the darkness, a perfect mathematical circle enclosing the village. It is a feat of engineering that rivals the stonework of Europe, yet it was dug with nothing but wooden spades and sweat. Peer into the trench. The bottom is filled with water, still and black as oil. Reflecting on the surface is the Southern Cross. The stars are trapped in the water, brought down from the sky to protect the sleepers. This ditch is not just a barrier against enemies. It is a spiritual border. Inside the circle is culture, order, the cooked, the human. Outside the circle is nature, chaos, the raw, the spirit. To cross the moat is to leave the world of men and enter the domain of the jaguar. On the high wooden palisade that runs along the inner ridge of the moat, a figure stands. The sentinel. He's motionless, a statue carved from muscle and patience. He leans on a spear made of heavy peach palm wood, the tip hardened in fire. He's not looking at the stars. He's looking at the wall of trees. Join him in his vigil. Listen with his ears. The jungle at night is a deception. It sounds peaceful. The rhythmic creak of the frogs, the distant hoot of an owl. But the sentry knows the difference between the noise of the wind and the noise of a footstep. He is listening for the snap of a twig that is too heavy. He is listening for the silence that ripples through the crickets when a predator, human or animal, moves through the underbrush. He is the membrane between the city and the wild. He is the immune system of the settlement. But he is not the only guardian. Turn back toward the center of the plaza. There, a small fire still burns, but it is not for cooking. It burns with a strange, aromatic smoke. White resin from the breu tree is melting on the coals, releasing a scent that is sharp, piney, and cleansing. The shaman is awake. He sits cross-legged on the earth, his body painted with the geometric patterns of the anaconda, black triangles on red skin. In his hand, he holds a pipe of hollow bird bone. He is preparing to travel, not through the forest, but through the layers of the universe. Watch him take the snuff, yopo, the seeds of the anadenanthera tree, toasted and ground into a fine gray powder. He blows the powder into his own nostrils with a sharp puff. His body tenses. The chemistry of the plant hits his blood. The walls of reality begin to dissolve. To him, the plaza is no longer just dirt. it is alive. The geometric earthworks are glowing with energy. He begins to chant. It is a low, guttural sound, barely a whisper at first, then rising in a rhythmic cadence. It is the sound of the breath, the sound of the wind. He is shaking a rattle made of a gourd filled with pebbles. Shh, clack. Shh, clack. Asterisk. The sound is dry, like the rustling of dry leaves, like the rattling of a rattlesnake's tail. It cuts through the humid night air. He is speaking to the spirits of the forest. He is negotiating. He is asking the masters of the game animals to release the deer and the peccary for the hunters tomorrow. He is asking the spirits of the river to hold back the flood. He is building a psychic wall around the village to reinforce the wooden one. The smoke of the resin rises, carrying his prayers up toward the Milky Way. Stand between these two guardians. The sentry on the wall, watching for physical danger with a spear. The shaman in the plaza, watching for spiritual danger with a song. They are the twin pillars of the civilization, the warrior and the seer. The night deepens. The moon climbs higher, shrinking the shadows. The geometric lines of the roads and the moats stand out in high relief, silver scars on a black land. From this vantage point, you understand the magnitude of their achievement. They have not just built a city, they have built a cosmology. They have carved their understanding of the universe into the mud. They have tethered themselves to the stars. But there is a fragility here. The sentry's spear can rot. The shaman's song can be forgotten. The moat can fill with silt. The jungle is patient. It presses against a palisade, testing the wood for weakness. A vine reaches out from the tree line, a green finger touching the defensive wall. A termite lands on the post. The process of reclamation is always waiting, just one heartbeat away. But for tonight, the line holds. The geometry is intact. The fire burns. The people sleep, suspended in their hammocks, dreaming the shared dreams of a tribe that knows exactly who they are and where they belong. You are safe here, standing in the plaza under the watch of the ancient constellations. The darkness is not empty. It is full of protection. Breathe in the cool, incense-laden air. Let the rhythm of the rattle settle your pulse. Shh, clack. Shh, clack. It is the sound of time passing. It is the sound of a world that believes it is eternal. But the wind is changing direction. Far to the east, down the great river, beyond the horizon where the sun will rise, something is coming. Something that has no place in this geometry. The stars are indifferent. They watch the shaman, and they watch the ships that are weeks away, sailing against the current. The night is ending. The dawn of the end is approaching. The fire has burned down to ash. The sentry has left the wall. The shaman's rattle is silent. We are drifting forward in time now, but the river feels different. The water seems heavier, sluggish, as if it is carrying a burden of grief that it cannot wash away. The light of the golden age is dimming, not because the sun has grown cold, but because the eyes that watched it are closing. History often teaches us to expect the end of a civilization to be a spectacle. We expect fire and sword. We expect the thunder of cannons, the crumbling of stone walls under the assault of battering rams, the screams of the dying on a battlefield. We expect a crescendo. But in the Amazon, the end did not come with a bang. It came with a whisper. It came on the wind. It came upstream, carried in the lungs of traders, in the handshake of a cousin from a lower village, on the surface of a seemingly innocent gift. It was a biological apocalypse, silent and invisible. The ships from the east, the floating castles of the bearded men, had touched the coast far away. They brought with them weapons of steel and gunpowder, yes, but those were clumsy tools compared to the weapon they carried in their blood. Smallpox, influenza, measles, the microscopic army. These invisible killers did not need boats. They moved faster than the explorers. They traveled from village to village, jumping from host to host, racing up the river highways like a wildfire that burns without smoke. They arrived at the garden cities long before the first European boot ever touched the black earth of Kuhikugu. Walk through the village now. The atmosphere has shifted from peace to a heavy, suffocating dread. The plaza is empty. The weeds are already beginning to push through the hard-packed clay, green fingers reclaiming the sacred space. There is no dancing. There is no music. Step into the longhouse. It is dark. The air is stagnant, smelling of sickness and sour sweat. The hammocks hang heavy, motionless cocoons in the gloom. Listen. You do not hear the rhythm of the loom or the grating of the manioc. You hear the sound of shallow, ragged breathing. You hear the feverish mumbling of a child burning up in the humidity. You hear the soft weeping of a mother who has no tears left to shed. The tragedy is absolute. The elders, the keepers of knowledge, died first. The library of the civilization was burned, not by fire, but by fever. The secrets of the soil, the cycles of the stars, the complex engineering of the weirs, all of it vanished as the voices fell silent. The social fabric ripped apart. There was no one left to harvest the manioc. The great fields stood ripe and rotting under the sun, feeding the birds, while the people starved in their hammocks, too weak to lift a hand. The water in the great jars ran dry. The fire in the hearth flickered and went out, and there was no one with the strength to blow on the embers. And then the silence took over completely. One by one, the voices stopped. The hammocks became shrouds. The survivors, terrified and broken, fled into the deep forest. They abandoned the cities of their ancestors. They left the geometric earthworks, the fruit orchards, the fish pond. They became refugees in their own land, shattering into small, mobile bands, forgetting the great society they had once been part of. They became the primitive tribes that later history would record, a shadow of the giants who came before. Now, the second phase of the collapse begins, the reclamation. This is the unique sorrow of a wooden civilization. A stone ruin fights the earth. The Parthenon stands defiant against the wind. The pyramids mock the sand. But a city built of wood and earth has made a pact with nature. I am yours, and to you I shall return. Watch the speed of the erasure. The roof of the longhouse, once watertight and proud, begins to fail. The palm thatch dries and becomes brittle. The heavy rains punch through, finding the gaps. Water drips onto the earthen floor, turning the hard clay back into mud. Fungi, the great decomposers, bloom in the damp timber. They are beautiful and terrible. Orange, white, yellow corals growing on the posts that held up the roof. They eat the cellulose. They soften the heart of the wood. Termites rise from the ground. They build their mud tunnels up the sides of the carved pillars. They devour the history from the inside out. Click, click, click. Millions of tiny jaws working in the dark, erasing the architecture of 1,000 years. Gravity waits. It is patient. One night, during a storm, the central beam gives way. There is no one there to hear it. A soft, heavy thud. The roof collapses inward. The walls bow out and fall. The structure that housed 50 generations becomes a mound of compost. The sun strikes the floor of the plaza. Without the feet of the dancers to beat it down, the forest explodes. Seeds that have been dormant for decades, waiting for this moment, burst open. Pioneer species, Secrepia, ferns, rush in to heal the scar. Vines, the constrictors of the plant world, weave a net over the debris. They bind the rotting wood to the earth. They pull everything down. The moats stop flowing. They fill with leaves, with silt, with the falling debris of the canopy. The sharp geometric lines soften. The edges blur. The circle becomes a depression. The square becomes a hump in the ground. The orchards go wild. The fruit trees, once carefully spaced, are crowded by the aggressive jungle giants. They fight for light, growing gnarled and strange. They still drop their fruit, but now it falls for the agouti and the tapir, not for the basket of the harvester. Time accelerates. 50 years. 100 years. A Spanish explorer, Francisco de Orellana, floated down this river in 1542. He saw the tail end of the glory. He wrote of cities that gleamed white, of roads bustling with people, of a civilization that lined the banks for hundreds of miles. But when the next explorers returned a century later, they saw nothing. They saw only the wall of green. They saw only the scattered tribes hiding in the bush. They laughed at Orellana's journals. They called him a liar. They said he was hallucinating, driven mad by the heat. There was never a civilization here, they said. The soil is too poor. The jungle is too hostile. No one could build a city here. The forest had done its work too well. It had eaten the evidence. The illusion was complete. The garden city was buried so deep beneath the canopy that it became a ghost story. The memory of the millions who lived here was erased, replaced by the myth of the virgin rainforest. The wind blows through the trees now, shaking the leaves of the canopy. It sounds like a sigh. It is the sound of a world forgetting itself. You are standing in the middle of the ruin, but you cannot see it. You see only trees. You see only nature. But beneath your feet, the ground is uneven. If you were to dig, your hands would find the shards of pottery. If you were to dig deeper, you would find the black earth, the Terra Preta, dark and oily and rich, waiting in the darkness. It is the only thing that survived. The flesh is gone. The wood is gone. The words are gone. But the soil remains. It is the silent testament, the black gold that proves they were here. The fade is finished. The city has slept for 5 centuries. The rain begins to fall again, gently washing the leaves, washing the grave of the civilization. It is a peaceful sound. There is no more pain here. Only the cycle. Only the sleep. We are almost at the end of our night. The history has been told. The collapse has been witnessed. Now we must find our place in this story. We must find the peace in the silence. We have reached the end of the river. The current has slowed to a standstill. The great temporal journey that took us from the shifting of tectonic plates to the silent collapse of a civilization is now settling into the quiet water of the present moment. Open your mental eyes gently. Look at the forest one last time. It is 2024. The Amazon is still here, though it is wounded, though it is shrinking. But deep in the Upper Xingu, in the heart of the territory we have explored tonight, the silence is still intact. From the surface, nothing has changed since the day the last builder died. The canopy is a seamless blanket of emerald, hiding the scars of the earth. The jaguar still prowls the undergrowth, its paws stepping softly on the mounds that were once defensive walls. The roots of the kapok tree still strangle the buried shards of pottery. But the ghosts are speaking again. Listen. Far above the trees, there is a faint, rhythmic hum. Zzz. It is not a giant insect. It is a plane. Or perhaps a drone. It is flying low, skimming the top of the jungle. It carries no machetes. It carries no torches to burn the land. It carries a box of light. LiDAR. Light detection and ranging. It shoots millions of laser pulses down into the forest every second. These beams of light are like phantom fingers. They slip through the gaps in the leaves. They bypass the vines. They touch the ground and bounce back. On a computer screen miles away, the forest is being stripped naked. The digital algorithm removes the trees, erasing the biology to reveal the geology. And there, glowing on the screen in a spectral gray relief, the truth returns. The lines appear, the perfect circles of the moats, the straight, unwavering arrows of the causeways connecting the dark spots, the rectangular plazas, the vast, organized grid of the garden cities. They were never lost. They were just sleeping. The technology proves what Oriana saw. It vindicates the ghosts. It tells us that this was not a wilderness, but a masterpiece. It tells us that humanity once lived here in numbers and density that defy our modern understanding of the tropics. And they did it without destroying the world that housed them. But the most profound ruin is not the shape on the screen. It is the soil. Go back down to the ground for one final moment. Kneel on the earth. It is dark here under the trees. Dig your hand into the dirt. Feel it. It is cool, damp, and black. Terra Preta. 500 years have passed. The people are gone. The language is forgotten. The names of the kings and the architects have dissolved into the mist. But the soil is still fertile. Think about that. In a world where we worry about the scars we leave behind, the plastic in the ocean, the carbon in the air, the radioactive isotopes in the rock, these ancient people left behind a gift. They engineered the earth to be better than they found it. The soil is still waiting. It is still rich with the charcoal and the intention of the hands that mixed it. It is a battery of life that has held its charge for a millennium. If you were to plant a seed there today, right now, in the footprints of the ghosts, it would grow. It would thrive. This is the ultimate legacy. Not a monument of stone that says, "Look at me," but a bed of earth that says, "Grow." The storm that started our journey is passing. The rain in the Amazon is turning into a light mist, a soft breath on the face of the jungle. And in your room, the walls are becoming solid again. The gray mist is receding. The floor is no longer the rocking deck of a canoe. It is the steady, supportive foundation of your home. You are back. You are safe. You have traveled through the deep time of the earth. You have seen the mountains rise and the rivers reverse. You have felt the humidity of the first arrival and the warmth of the Golden Age hearth. You have witnessed the tragedy of the fade. But do not carry the sadness with you. Carry the peace. The Amazon teaches us that everything is a cycle. The wood rots to feed the soil. The soil feeds the tree. The tree feeds the sky. The city becomes the forest, and perhaps one day, the forest will teach us how to build a city again. Nothing is truly lost. It is only changed. The sleepless historian is closing the book. The fire we lit at the beginning of the night is now just a bed of warm, soft ash. The shadows are friendly. They are not hiding monsters. They are wrapping you in a cocoon of rest. Let the heaviness take your limbs. Let the rhythm of the imaginary river slow your heart. You are part of this long, beautiful story. You are made of the same carbon that is buried in the black earth. You are breathing the same oxygen that was exhaled by the canopy. You are connected. You are grounded. Sleep now. The sentries have left the walls, for there is no danger here. The shamans have finished their songs, for the spirits are at rest. The history has been told. The burden of remembering is no longer yours. I will carry it for you. The jungle sleeps. The cities sleep. The earth sleeps. And so should you. Good night, my sleepless friend.